Bagdasarian.
Here.
Committee member Gary Cornell.
Here.
Committee member Efren Olivares.
Here.
Committee member Zari Sinanian.
Here.
Chair Zari Amarian.
Here. Next item. The approval of minutes from our February 9th meeting. Do we have the minutes from our February 9th meeting?
Get a chance to go over them.
Those are unavailable.
Mr. Duran?
Yes, actually, Mr. Chair, the next item is a report from the Assistant Director regarding the posting of the agenda, which was posted on Thursday, February 5th, on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. And then with regard to the minutes, we don't have any minutes available for review and approval.
Okay. What is the next item?
Next item is item 3A under reports, which is a report by the Assistant Director, and it's my opportunity to follow up on any items from Tuesday's meeting or to provide any additional information as a result of Tuesday's meeting or as an introduction to today's agenda. I do want to report that you have an updated revised preliminary proposed funding allocation plan by funding category. As I reported on Monday, we've added additional funds as a result of a CDBG loan payoff. So we've added that amount into your funding plan. And we've also provided you with a copy of the spreadsheet of the final funding recommendations as a result of Monday's meeting with regard to the social service project. And then the only other thing I'd like to report is we do not have, today's meeting is to review and evaluate and interview agencies applying for CDBG capital improvement funds for fiscal year 09-10. As you know, part of the annual plan includes other capital improvement projects, which are city projects, which are pre-designated and pre-approved by the City Council. For fiscal year 09-10, we have 3 such projects. One is the Pacific Park Pool Project. Another is the Code Enforcement Program. And the third is the Section 108 loan payment that we make to HUD for funds that we borrowed to complete the Edison Pacific project several years ago. So we will not be hearing presentations on those pre-designated projects today. But I also want to add that there was a special meeting regarding an update on the Pacific Park Pool project that was held yesterday, and the presentation was provided by the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department to receive direction to conduct an environmental study and direction regarding a preferred conceptual project plan from the City Council. And that was yesterday. So that project is still being developed, and there is a funding plan in place which still includes the CDBG funds. So the only presentations you will be receiving today are for the community capital improvement projects.
Mr. Duran, can you tell us the amounts of the pre-designated projects?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The amounts are depicted on your revised proposed funding allocation plan. For the city's code enforcement program, the amount is $400,000. For the Pacific Park Pool project, the amount is $1,500. Sorry, $1,500,000.
I like the first number better.
And for the Section 108 loan payment, the amount is $249,000.
What's the total to date for the pool project?
Total to date in CDBG funds, including the 09-10 allocation, it's $3.7 million.
And the conversations yesterday revolved around a $5 to $6 million project. Is that my recollection?
Correct. Committee Member Olivares. In addition to CDBG funds, There are state bond funds allocated to the project and general revenue capital improvement program funds. As you heard yesterday, one of the issues might be that the state bond funds are frozen, so they aren't available yet. The plan is by the time the project is ready to initiate construction, those funds will be released and the project will be ready to be fully funded.
Follow up with another question. How much time do we have to sit on this money before either we lose it or we have to do something with it?
HUD has an expenditure rate threshold, which means that jurisdictions should not have a remaining balance in their account of more than 1.5 times their entitlement. But for example, for Glendale, that translates to, do you remember what it was, myself? That translates to $4.9 million. We have until we will begin to run into an expenditure rate issue if we don't expend these funds by April 30th of 2010, or we don't begin expending a good portion of these funds by April 2010. So it's possible that we may need a discussion with the Parks Department and the council on whether we'll be able to meet that time frame at some point in the future.
Now, does the city follow do the city departments follow the same process that somebody from the private sector would? In other words, if the money is awarded, they're required to provide certain paperwork, invoices, whatever the process is. Do the city departments have to go through exact same process through community development to disperse the funds?
The department co-signs the construction progress payments, any payments to vendors, such as architects or engineers that are paid for out of CDBG. Our office does review and co-sign those invoices.
So you have oversight to make sure that these monies are being spent on the specific project that's been pre-designated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. What happens, I'm just curious now, what happens if we do run into that deadline? I mean, what's going to happen? What are we looking at doing if that deadline approaches?
Chairman Amarian, historically what's happened is HUD will perform an evaluation. HUD, which is the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, will determine that we are not meeting that expenditure rate threshold. We are not expending our funds in a timely manner, and HUD will historically, HUD will put you on a 1-year probation, and HUD will require you to send to HUD an expenditure plan to demonstrate which projects you have and what the timelines are and what your progress is to ensure that you will have adequate funds spent within 1 year to fall under that threshold. So historically, that's what we've had to do. And this has happened a couple of times. One time was with the Edison Pacific project because we were accumulating a substantial amount of money because we needed it for the project. It was a huge project. And then there was one other time a few years ago.
Okay, thank you. Item 3B is reviewing the proposal evaluation process and the interview and deliberation protocol. Before I go to my colleagues, I wanted to say that the agenda, for anybody following at home, has 15-minute intervals listed for the 4 sponsors and departments that are coming before us. Today I'm going to be much more relaxed on that limit, and I do apologize in terms of the other groups that will be coming in for their scheduled times, and I appreciate their patience. It's just with capital projects, I think we'd be doing a disservice to the public and to the agencies themselves if we hurry through these questions that we may have. So, we'll play that by ear. As far as the process itself, I want to make one more comment. I am disappointed this year that the pre-designated projects, the city departments didn't come forward this year to answer questions, and it's something I believe we requested specifically. Again, they came before us last year, and I don't see why they aren't here today. And I know the entire hoopla about the Pacific Pool project and how it's in the lockbox, and the lockbox is guarded by a pit dog or a pit bull, and the pit bull has someone holding the chain with a gun. I understand that, but at the same time, this entire process, the 2 years that I've been here, and now this is the third year. I don't understand why there's a disconnect between what city private organizations have to do in terms of convincing this board of how the money is spent versus what the city agencies have to do. I understand that they've gone through a similar process within the city with either the city manager or the city council, but it really hamstrings us in terms of getting a good idea of when the projects are going to get started, how we're supposed to evaluate and compare relatively how the money is going to be spent. It is disappointing to me, and I'm going to put the request in now today for next year. And I may not be here, but for whoever is here, the city needs to stop pre-designating projects. But if they choose to pre-designate projects, they need to have those departments come before this body and answer our questions and make a presentation. Mr. Cornell?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's well taken. I think you reiterated that point last year. It's been going on now for some time. Mr. Alvarez, the senior member here of this committee, can possibly add to that. Perhaps since last year when you made this request, or the committee made this request, that the assistant director might have something to shed on this. And I'd like to possibly hear from him regarding your constructive comments. But I don't see too much improvement on this. It's been going on this many years. It's a political item here that's paramount to each of the council members, especially at this time of year when they're running, three of them are running for re-election. And it's more political than actually procedural. And I'd like to be optimistic, and hopefully we can be. But I'd like to hear what the assistant director has to say since last year, because I know he's been feverishly working on this, and perhaps he can have some constructive message on that item.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Before we get to Mr. Duran, do any of the other committee members have something to say? Mr. Bagdasarian?
I think there are two separate issues. One is whether the city should have pre-designated projects, and the other is whether they should come and report to this body. And I think both are valid points, but I think they could be addressed separately. And and the merits of each one, I think, needs to be reviewed. Is there any comments about both items?
Mr. Duran?
Chairman, the Mayor and Committee Member Bagdasarian and Cornell, what I can say is that the pre-designated projects reflect the City Council's priorities with regard to the use of CDBG funds for the priorities of the City of Glendale as perceived by the City Council members. The three projects pre-designated for fiscal year 9-10 are ongoing projects. They are not new projects. They're projects that have been priorities for a number of years. And I'm talking about the Pacific Park Pool or park projects in general, for that matter, the code enforcement program, and our 108 loan payment to HUD. If there were new proposals on the part of the city or new pre-designated priorities or projects identified by the City Council, to me that definitely would have warranted presentations to the advisory committee so that you would know, as you pointed out, Mr. Chair, how those projects fit into the overall scheme of the goals and objectives of the CDBG program and the priorities of the community. But they weren't new projects. It was the same projects that have been pre-designated and funded for a number of years. In addition to that, the Pacific Park Pool project, in terms of the status of what the project is, it's been in discussion with the City Council in terms of the parks trying to get, flush out a conceptual plan that the council wanted to settle on. And I think they finally got that yesterday. So I'm not sure how much more light they would have been able to shed on their project since their last update, which was on October 8th. So those were the reasons we felt it wasn't necessary to include those presentations on today's agenda.
Mr. Sinanian?
Is there some kind of a legal document that governs the treatment of these pre-designated projects? Is the procedure, which has apparently been followed for a number of years, at someone's discretion, the City Council's discretion?
Mr. Sinanian, it's based on direction that we received from the City Council.
So there's no document saying that there should be such a thing as a pre-designated project, and on top of that, the pre-designated projects don't have to come in front of the advisory board and report.
That is correct. There are no HUD guidelines which dictate how jurisdictions handle pre-designated, non-pre-designated, or, what percentage is available for the community, what percentage is available for city projects. There are no specific guidelines like that from HUD.
If I may, one more. You may not know this, but to the extent that you do other municipalities have a different procedure on these kinds of issues, specifically pre-designated projects and the treatment of them?
It probably runs the gamut. Needless to say, there are thousands of jurisdictions across the country that are direct recipients of CDBG funds, like the City of Glendale, and based on my knowledge and Mr. Carrillo's knowledge, it runs the gamut in terms of how other jurisdictions handle their planning for the CDBG funds. One of our neighbors, for example, used all of their public social service funds for youth programs with only one youth vendor for a number of years. And so there was no competitive RFP process. We're aware of other communities where the city uses capital funds for all city projects. So it really runs the gamut. And again, that's what the CDBG program is about. That's how it was designed for each jurisdiction to determine for itself what its local needs and priorities are and what process they're going to follow to address those needs and priorities. What HUD does require is public participation in the process. And in one manner in which most jurisdictions meet that requirement is through a body, an advisory body, to represent the views and concerns of the residents. In addition to that, we have public hearings, we publish notices in the newspaper to get additional comment and additional public participation.
One second. Mr. Bagdasarian, you had a follow-up?
Well, I think, to be exact, they were talking about three projects. The Pacific Park Pool project, it seems it does get the review. It was discussed yesterday in details at 2:30 meeting. The loan repayment is just and the code enforcement, I guess the issue becomes whether part of these funds could be allocated part of the general city fund as opposed to CDBG funds. I guess loan repayment doesn't require any review. Then the only project that could, in a sense, benefit from our review would be the code enforcement, and to look at that and see whether that's all requirements by law that the city needs to in that case, then that doesn't become. Then it only becomes an issue of the bidding process and whether or not all the funds need to be, funded through the CDBG.
Thank you. Mr. Olivares?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I appreciate what Mr. Duran says, but I think the decision as to whether or not a presentation is wanted here rests here with this body, so that regardless of what's going on outside, if we want to see a presentation, I think we should get a presentation. And I say that because, for example, on the code enforcement, we know what the program is, we're familiar with it, but not necessarily everybody that's out there is familiar with it. So a presentation in front of this body will allow us to ask questions and kind of shed more light into what the project is. In the case of the pool project, I have no problem with the pool project, but I have a problem in the fact that we're not really aware of what the schedule is. We don't know in relation to when we need to disperse funds. And I think that's the kind of thing that I would be looking for. I also remember that when I was chair, usually on the agenda, I would see the agenda or a draft of it prior to the meeting to see if there was anything that we wanted to be added on there. I would hope that the same process is taking place with our current chair. And so that's just my feelings on that.
Thank you. It's and Mr. Duran, I do appreciate your comments as well. And yes, the code enforcement project has been one that has been around for quite a long time, predating when I got here to the CDBG. But at the same time, familiarity with the process doesn't belie the fact that it's a year afterwards we're sitting here listening to new proposals. Hypothetically speaking, if I'm not happy with any of the proposals here, I wouldn't feel comfortable today saying, you know what, I want to give some money to the code enforcement project, because quite honestly, I don't have any documents on it. There's no presentation, no questions to be asked. I don't even know if they want extra money. They're not even here to answer that question. Hey, would you like another $250,000 for code enforcement? So, I know there is some focusing on the pool project, but it's not just about the pool. It's this idea that that because we understand very well that the city council makes the priority and makes the decisions, and we understand that they know better what the budget process of the city is, and they see the full picture better than we do. But I don't think that justifies not having these departments available here. And you know what? We'll end on that. Let's get to our interviews today. We'll handle them in the same way we did on Monday, except there will be a little bit more latitude on my part in terms of time as I see fit, especially for questions from committee members. So our first action item 4A is conducting the interviews with capital improvement applicants. Yes, Mr. Olivares.
Just for clarification,
Of course.
How much time do you think you'll allow for a presentation on the projects by the...
I think I will allow up to 10 minutes for the actual presentation, and then about 2 to 3 minutes with some significant latitude for questions from each committee member. Wonderful. Let's start with the Homenetmen facility improvements, sponsored by Homenetmen Ara chapter. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Vigen Davidian. I've been a member of Homenetmen Ara Glendale chapter for nearly 30 years. I've been a parent, a volunteer, board member, and ex-chairman. Currently, I'm serving as... do you need this, by the way? Or can you hear me okay? I'm currently serving as the chairman of the Planning and Implementation Committee for our new center, which we now affectionately call our North Campus, actually. With me here today is also Mr. Armand Gorgorian, who is our split on me. Our executive director. I'll be making a short presentation, and we'll be open to questions following. It's a pleasure to be here again with you. We are grateful for your assistance in the past. We've been in front of you about the same time last year. We presented our project, actually starting off by saying what the needs of a second campus were. As you know, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, volunteer youth-serving community service organization in Glendale. We've been here since 1978. We are currently serving over 2,400 members. Our activities are overwhelming. Our current center and our center that has been in operation for more than 15 years is not currently in Glendale, but has been a beneficiary of your help for many years. We finally, after many years of search and our pledge to locate to a facility in Glendale to help us further our programs, in 2007, we purchased a new... Yeah. For some reason, I'm going into just... Okay. Thank you. As you can see, our current center is just outside Glendale. The red is the boundary between Glendale and the city of Los Angeles. Within 400 yards of that, just to the north, we found a very suitable property about a year and a half or so ago. As you can see, the vitals on that, 51,000 square feet of building area, 24,000 square feet of building area over a 51,000 square foot property, 7 lots. And we invested over $4 million in the property itself. It's within walking distance of our current center, and it is located within Glendale, very close to many of our constituents. Next slide, please. That's the property looking northwesterly. As you can see, it's an odd-shaped property, and we have many facilities within that with a lot of opportunity and a lot of potential. Next slide. This is an aerial view. As you can see, we have a very suitable parking lot in the back with a warehouse facility and also offices, and a very exceptionally located circulation pattern, unlike our current place, which has both parking problems as well as circulation problems. We have 2 streets, Dolores and Roslyn, just to the north and south of our facility, that provide us with a very nice circulation pattern and a parking. Next slide, please. Again, we went about this very thoughtfully. We had master planned the facility as we had our previous facility, looked at the suitable uses, looked at what we wanted to do there, and went by it step by step. We wanted to make sure that we brought in members and youth of the community that didn't have the opportunity to go to our existing center because of its lack of space, because of its parking, because of the just sheer conflict of timing that we had serving about 2,400 members. So we thought about all of that and how we're going to use the North Campus in terms of a joint project together with the existing project. Next slide. So we had a 3-phase planning process: immediate term, short term, and long term. The short term projects are currently the projects that we are working on. We are in front of you, and we brought to you last year as well. Next slide, please. The immediate term projects, again, A and B are the warehouse area. C, D, and E are located within the building area and are for cultural, other athletic facilities. But basically, areas A and B are the areas that will be converted to a full-size gym facility, multi-use, and able to support basically 2 full-size activity courts. Next slide, please. Our progress and status, we received approval of grants from your committee last year, and we conducted our finished our master planning and evaluation of use options very carefully. And then we methodically went about hiring an architect and local architect, Alajaja and Marcusi architects, prominent Glendale architects who have also helped us in the past as well. We went through a process of completing and submitting the designs to the city, responded to various questions and requests, received building permits finally on 8th of December 08. We are, by the way, I should mention, managing the project in-house with professionals to reduce the costs to the city by as much as 20%. We have advertised the contracts, and hopefully the construction will begin shortly for the funds that were approved last year. We wanted to present this to you, next slide please, to mention to you, and this is the breakdown of the project from last year. We basically had a project over $400,000, almost $60,000 of which we had raised, and we have raised those funds already, and we got approval last year for $345,000. Again, I wanted to emphasize that we presented last year's history to, first of all, express our gratitude to you and continued support. And secondly, we wanted to show you our commitment to this project, to the city, and to the youth of the community, and our commitment to complete our project. Next slide, please. We had some modifications. This is our proposal for this year. And some of the reasons why we have a continuation of requests for funding. For years we had the summer basketball program, which was still leaving youth out of our programs because of its sheer size. We have decided to do away with that, and we also had requested funds for that program from your committee. Now we are going to a year-round development league program where every kid, every youngster is welcome into the program. We're no longer going to have waiting lists. We're going to have to do that year-round. It requires more facilities, so we decided to actually expand out the gymnasium area to a larger area. So we need a larger physical gym space inside the new facility. Because of that, we need additional funding. And as I said, also another thing that is very paramount importance to us in our current facility is safety and security measures for the youth, and we wanted to also include that, which was not included in last year's funding. And thirdly, some additional costs that we are incurring because of additional code requirements with the City of Los Angeles, because part of our property is within the City of Los Angeles. In summary, again, we have raised about $23,000 of these funds, and we are coming to you with a request of $182,000, nearly $183,000. Next slide, please. This is our current facility. As you can see, the parking, this is the design and plan for, this is a completed design for the facility improvements. One more click, if you will, and blow up of that area, which will become our sports athletic multi-use gymnasium facility. Basically, this entire area will be made up of a full-size basketball court, multi-use court, and additional facilities. Also, the southern portion, which is here, will be constructed as a modern, again, restrooms facility and a waiting area and a full secure parent lounge with one point of access configuration, just like we have in our current center for ultimate security leading into the parking area. So basically, that's really the plan that we have. Hopefully, construction will start with last year's funds very soon. And next slide, which is, I think, my last slide. And just very honestly with you, justification for the project, we have demonstrated the need for Homenetmen's community programs. We believe this is a very well thought out program. This is master planned. This is run by professionals. I put my volunteer time on this committee, By profession, I'm a civil engineer, I'm a transportation engineer, and so are all of the committee members are professionals that put their own time on this project with a lot of commitment. We are emphasizing safety and security. We have demonstrated our ability to perform and manage our work efficiently and generate more funds. We have a very high degree of volunteer contribution to our programs and raising the share of our own funds to match the city's funds. We want to have the top quality youth center for our kids. And ultimately, we want to give back to the community that gives to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Sinanian.
Can I ask to pass it?
Sure. Here, I'll give.
But
I'll
reserve
give,
my right to ask questions. Though. I do want to reserve my right to ask questions.
Oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Thank you.
No, you lost your ability to ask questions for all the projects now. Okay, Mr. Bagdasarian.
Well, I want to start by thanking you for a very nice, comprehensive presentation. It is very nice to see the amount of planning that has gone into this project. It's very nice for a center that will be serving the community for very, very many years to come to have the such a detailed, thorough job done in the planning for its work that needs to be done. So I want to thank you for that. I wanted to ask you. I know you've been here before,
yes,
and you've talked to us about the youth that you serve. I wanted to ask you about the impact of the new wave of immigrants on your center, as well as the impact that economy has had. Are you seeing more folks coming? I know we're mentioning that we no longer have waiting lists, and we've talked about the waiting list before.
By design.
So I wanted to see if you can touch on those facts and just kind of tell us a little bit about those factors that you're dealing with.
I'll start off and then I'll pass it on to Mr. Gorgorian because I think he is much more qualified to answer some of those questions since he deals with it on his skin, as we say, on a daily basis. Obviously, with the wave of immigrants, we see that constantly. We have seen that in the past 30 years that the organization has been around periodically. Every time we have a new generation, we do have a new wave of kids coming in with new needs, whether it's language needs, whether it's financial needs, whether it's cultural needs. It's all there. It changes every 5 or 10 years. But we've seen it all, and we actually try to adapt to it. And one of the things that I've always said, as I do in my profession, we stick to it very heavily in our organization, is that we subscribe to both progress and change, because we have to adapt to change. We have seen the change, so we have to be ready for it. We're always ready for it. Economy, we've never been impacted so badly by the economy, and we see it now. And both in terms of dwindling contributions, as well as more and more kids and more families that are needing our help. For example, there were families that could afford to go to YMCA before. We are a tenth of their cost to our members, and I think those are things that really are part of what's happening to us today, and we're proactively trying to get ready for it and be ready for it. Now, we've always looked ahead, always looked at least 5 to 10 years ahead to see, what do we need. We can sit on our laurels, but we really don't.
Well, I believe you covered everything. We do have a lot of new applicants that are coming to us and explaining that why they cannot afford to pay the minimum amount of membership dues that we have for them. And our policy has always been that if you can't pay, that's fine with us, and we will still serve you. City of Glendale, the HUD program has a requirement that started last year that when it has to serve low to moderate income people. As of last year, the requirement is that we have to provide 10% of those documents, backup documents, that they are low to moderate income. First, we thought it's going to be very difficult. With the new situation, with the new economy situation, it is much easier to collect those documents because they are all in dire need of help from any organization or any agency from city or county or the federal government. The new wave of people are always coming in. And there is a limit to how many we can serve. We are trying to do the best we can. One of the things that we, as explained in the presentation, it was the summer basketball program that during the summer when kids were out of the school, we were serving 300 to 400 kids. Then it became kind of irrelevant because the schools went round the year. Now with this new the facility that we have, we started this D-League, which eliminates our need to apply for the summer basketball funds, but in its place we are doing this round the year, 3 months intervals, so that the kids can use that. And one of the reasons that we made some adjustments in the expenditure that we had last year that you approved, and during the year we went with the community development department and we made adjustments, was the bathrooms that we had there. Originally we thought that we're not going to touch them and there's no cost there. And then we noticed that we are going to need additional gym facility. So we are knocking those bathrooms back to the end of the building, and because there was a slope there that was not usable when we move it back, so we have additional cost to bring it up to make it level. In that case, we are having four additional rims. So for the development program, we will be having 4 small courts for 7 to 8-year-old kids to participate. So, as Vigan said, as the economy changes, as the number of applicants are added, we try to be proactive and to try to come up with new ideas how to serve additional kids.
Well, it seemed to me...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let's... and I appreciate all of this. But in terms of time, I would ask that we focus on the nuts and bolts of the actual what the money's going to be used for.
Okay.
I think it's been well substantiated. I don't think anybody's going to argue that they've substantiated and validated last year's proposal. So let's, Mr. Bagassarian, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just a time issue. Do you have any specific questions about the actual proposal itself in terms of the nuts and bolts, how the money's going to be spent?
I think as far as the development, the project, basically, if I may just make one more comment, it seems that with these funds, we're taking a beer warehouse that you've already purchased and making it be used as a gym, as a facility that right now people can come and use. And it's for the majority of the funds have been spent in purchasing the property, and we're just making it usable for the youth to be used.
That's a fact. Yeah. As I said, we've made a major commitment, going under a lot of obligation for a $4 million property.
And it's like most other nonprofit organizations, you basically have done that in an economy that you knew it's going to be hard to raise the funds, and you didn't have to do that. So that's nice.
Thank you, Mr. Bagassarian. Mr. Cornell.
I've got acquainted with you during the 2 years that I've been here, and you have a fantastic program, well documented, good objectives, met and exceeded goals, and wanted to ask you, you mentioned you're an engineer. Are you a civil or a structural engineer?
No, I'm a civil by profession and by license, but my expertise and specialty is in transportation and traffic engineering.
Mm-hmm. I was going through your packet here, and it's very well prepared, which says a lot about your organization, how you've been around since, 1978?
Much older than that.
I didn't see any. I was looking for approximate the breakdown Did you, organization, or did staff here at CDBG handle the competitive bidding?
In collaboration with their department, we've been doing the competitive bidding. We have already published the civil work. We will be opening the bids on the 24th. And as of today, we have published for HVAC and the athletic equipment and for surfacing, and that will be opened on March 9th. And everything is in collaboration with them. The bid, when we open the bid, their representatives are going to be there with us and the contractors and open the bids.
Okay, so they're due on February 24th then?
February 24th will be the first bid to be opened.
Yeah. I was looking through the packet here to see pretty much, of course you don't know now because the bids are not going to be due until the 24th, about your estimate on this job. So we won't know that until the bids come in to see if we're high, low, or in between, or on target, or what here.
Mr. Cornell, as you well know, when we present a package to your committee and to the department, we do get at least one or two bids from people that we know prior to, so that we know what numbers to put here. Unfortunately, from the day that we do that, and then the approval, and then we go forward with the different stages of the activity, the prices change. And that could happen, and that's when we go to the department and we talk to them and we make decisions accordingly.
So the figure that you're presenting us for funding
are based on the estimates that we have received at this moment.
Committee professionals and initial estimates.
I noticed on the chart when you're presenting this and going over, there was one item, item number 5, if I remember correctly, regarding the electric panel. You had all the others highlighted except for...
Very observant. Actually, I wanted to mention that. I'm sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Except for that one here. And I wanted to see, in looking over staff's analysis here, it indicated that particular item on the electric panel where you have had funding last year. And from what I see, it's just cosmetic from going, instead of the interior, going to the exterior. So I was wondering why that can't be, the funds can't be included from last year then.
Actually, I'll start off. That's the reason why we highlighted it, and it's highlighted white also on this year's funding. But I thought I didn't have enough time to go over it, and maybe I would just get hamstrung. The electrical panel was in the program last year, and once we went through the program, we realized that relocation of that panel was going to be much more costly than that item. And also, the initial thought was that we weren't going to do that last year, but then for safety and security reasons, because it is something that's protruding quite a bit into the playing field area. And it's included in this year's funding with more realistic estimates. Armand?
Let me add to that. As I mentioned, when we decided that we need to add on the gyms area and push back the bathrooms, so there was a cost incurred there, leveling the floor and then moving the bathrooms. So we went to the department and explained to them that for these purposes we want to spend the money here. And already we know that with $42,000 we're not going to be able to panel that. And when we say panel, let me explain. The panel is about 6 foot high, about 4 feet wide, and it comes into the gym area about 1 foot forward from the wall.
Right over
so
here.
it is a security problem for the kids. But we went to the city and explained to them that this is the reason that we want to shift the funds from removing that panel to being able to add on the gym area, and they accepted that. It was never our intention to forget about removal of that panel. That was part of it, because the kids are running very fast, and a little bit this side or that side, they can go and get to hit that panel. And that was the reason that it was shifted from last year to this year's budget.
It's right over here, and it's protruding about 2 to 3 feet into the playing field area, and we had to use heavy padding for it. And as Mr. Gregorian pointed out, last year's program we intended to
bathrooms.
we intended to have the court here and the secondary playing field here, but now we're gaining significantly more by actually expanding the open playing area, multi-use area to here, relocating the bathrooms from this location to this location, and creating the entry area, parent serving area here. And that's there's about a 1.5-foot drop from here to here. And for better use, the decision was made to actually level that. So it requires quite a bit of construction.
Last question or comment, Mr. Cornell.
Oh, okay. So that's the difference of the increase from over last year, I see. Just one last one. I was looking here through the packet and I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. What's the counter days or working days involved in your completion of this project?
The one that we applied this year?
Correct.
We are anticipating that because it starts July, the fiscal year starts July, we are anticipating, because we don't have to go through the process of approval of the plans anymore. We have all those approvals. So we believe that immediately after the fiscal year starts, we will go out to bid, probably August, and we will start in September.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Sinanian?
I know you set some pretty narrow contours to the questions, but I do want to go beyond that just on a couple.
Give you some latitude,
Okay,
Mr. Sinanian.
thanks. In terms of reaching out to these newcomers, we spoke about the newcomers, and that is a group that's probably specifically in need of your services. What kind of reach out efforts are there? If you could speak about that. And also, you mentioned that there's a minimal due, and this question is also beyond the contours, but minimal due, but you waive it. What's the minimal due? Those two questions, if you could answer.
The minimum due is $12 per month, and we have quite a few that they don't come up with that minimum due, and we are okay with that. We have to. And in regards to reaching out, we are on the television, we are in the newspapers, we are in the news, and somehow in our community, Homenetmen is a very well-known organization, and even before coming to this city, they know about us. And due to the number of kids that we are serving already, and we just having difficulty to serve much more than that, so whatever they come in already covers everything without reaching out. But we do reach out through the television and the media.
The word of mouth is just probably the strongest, traction point that we have, and it just goes without saying that we've had always more people wanting to join and use the programs than we've had, practically place for. And the other point is not just the place; it also is the supervision. We are very careful about not having this be a place that people can just come and dump their kids. Because they don't have any other place for it. Every kid, if you come to our center, there's 200 to 300 people, our current center, every night, lurking around, but no one's unsupervised. There are I would say about 250 to 300 volunteer members that run our programs, in addition to paid staff that we have. So that's one of the requirements that we've always had, is that we don't bring kids in and just let them be on the facility without being supervised. Be part of a team, be with the supervisor, whether it's gymnastics, ping pong, it's martial arts, it's the basketball, it's the volleyball players, it's the soccer players, it's whatnot, or it's the scouts, or other cultural programs, which we have plenty. Every single kid is supervised.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian. Mr. Olivares.
Thank you. Actually, my questions revolved. I'm obviously very familiar with your program. Been around for many, many years. We've always supported you. But I had some issues with the proposal in terms of lack of information for me. I saw the request for the electrical panel, and your explanation kind of shed a little bit of light on that. But when I looked through the plans and where it's located, where it was moving to, there was nothing here that could tell me the scope of the work. in terms of the architectural plans. So I looked at the proposal that you have from Hilltech Inc. for relocating the panel, and I found the same problem in terms of lacking information in terms of how those $92,000 that are proposed are going to be spent. And then on top of that, we add the $45,000 that were allocated last year for relocating electrical panels. So we're really talking about, I think, a panel that will cost $135,000 or so to relocate. And again, I have difficulty reconciling this proposal with what the actual work may be, because I don't know what the actual work is. If you could talk to that.
Mr. Olivares, probably you're absolutely right. As usual, the details are not there. But the details, if you accept from me, if we go back to that drawing again, exactly where it is right now, the panel, where the panel is, outside of it there is a cave-shaped place that is going to move outside and be placed over there. Again, we don't have the drawing for that right now, but the removal is from this side. Actually, it's going to be taken out and put a new one outside. A new panel will be go outside. Most of that expense that we have is we're going to incur is going to be the permits that we're going to get from the city. It's very expensive topic, that one, the one that we were told. Again, there's one way of looking at it, $130,000 for that, but the original $42,000 that was in the project last year is being spent, and some actually, for the removal of the bathrooms, creating new bathrooms, and leveling the floor. The $345,000 that we were allocated last year, we were granted last year, we believe that it's going to go much higher than what we anticipated. And we will find out the first tape of it on the 24th.
Okay. On the proposal that is included in the packet, indicates that the city of item 3 says City of Glendale Power Department costs are included in the price of this proposal. Do we know what those are?
Say that again?
It says City of Glendale Power Department costs are included in the price of this proposal. Do we know what those costs might be?
The permits.
No, and I understand that, but have you got electrical permits yet? Because you said you've already
For that
obtained
purpose,
permits.
not. Not.
So
not
no electrical
for that.
permit yet?
Not. The permits that we have is all civil permits that we've acquired.
Okay.
And HVAC.
Right. That's why my question is, somebody must be consulting with the power department, Glendale Water and Power.
Well,
Do we know
actually,
what those are?
Hilltech, when they provided this new price to us, they are the people that did that and gave us that price.
Yeah, and again, that's why I'm asking the question, because they mention it here, but there is no detail on what those might be, and that's where I'm having an issue.
Again, as always, the expenditures are always, according to documentation and sense.
But, Mr. Olivares, if it's necessary, we can always get that document and have an additional document presented to your committee to give the to
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I asked.
We can call Hilltech, because he's the ones that has given us that, and ask him to give us a more detailed document.
Thank you.
I share Mr. Olivares' concerns. We need as much detail as possible on these, and my concern, and let me tell you, is not about your program, not about what you do in the city. My concern is that the difficulties you state that you ran into last year, I'm not sure whether next year we're going to be talking about the 2009-2010, and it was underestimated. The costs were underestimated, and that's the only reason why we're looking for the details we're looking for. Most of the questions that I had had to do with other aspects of just the detail line by line. When someone comes to my house and I want my gutters changed, I ask them exactly how much is it going to cost for you to bring your ladder in and get those gutters up there. How much are each piece, every component, and those are gutters. This is you're talking about almost $200,000 in requests. So if you can get us those documents, if we do fund the request, we're going to ask to see those documents. So, other than that, I appreciate you guys coming here, and we will go on to the next presentation. Mr. Olivares.
If I make one quick comment, we're going to be here for a little while. You can contact whoever gave you the proposal if they have that information handy.
That's what I'm going to do that right now, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your concern, but in all fairness, we've been doing this for so many years right now. And in the past, when we have presented this estimates, it has been at this level, not more detailed, and that is why we didn't go into more detail. We didn't ask people that gave us the estimates to give us more details. We just did what we have been doing in the past, and we continued that. I will be more than happy to go out of this chamber right now, call the comment. Hopefully I can find him and ask him to give me a more detailed estimate in that regard. And the last word that I want to say is that our history has shown that anytime we have problem, we have overcame that. The problems that we had last year, mainly the main problem that we had last year was the lengthy time that we had to get the permits, nothing more. And you have appropriated $345,000 for this project. We need to conclude this. And in order to conclude this, we respectfully request from you to approve this one also.
And Mr. Grogan, I have no doubt about your agency's, HomeNetMen's ability to overcome these problems, and I don't want you to construe it as anything other than just constructive criticism. So,
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Again, I do want to apologize to both the public and to the other agencies. I realized a little bit too late that the times on the agenda would be almost impossible to stick to when you're dealing with programs that are asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I do appreciate greatly your patience. Let us move on. I would remind my fellow committee members, please, I think every organization that's coming before us today has demonstrated their worth to the community. Let's try to keep the questions and comments as much as possible to the nuts and bolts of the actual capital improvement. Okay. The next interview is exterior paint and repair, New Horizons. Dr. Rochard, thank you so much for your patience.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. This should take not too long. We are asking that our mental health facility be refreshed with the paint of exterior. You were so kind 10 years ago to help us buy that property, and now houses our mental health counseling for children 0 to 21. It serves over 200 families. That is going to be part of our new children's village, which is ready to pull permits, and hopefully the bank will approve my construction loan, and we will break ground in spring. That's where we're at. It's at the planning department. We've asked for an extension so we can pull the permits, but the plans have been approved. Everything else has been approved: environmental, zoning, archaeological, historical, everything, traffic calming. So it's ready to go. Now the county has put that as part of our village for children, and we just wanted to look just as nice as your new village will look in South Glendale. It's been over 10 years, so I know you only have one bid, but it will go out to bidding, competitive bidding with the wages, prevailing wages, so don't worry about that. It will be published in the Glendale News Press, and it's just to make South Glendale in that part. I think I can say I'm very proud of our facilities that look good for children and families. So it's straightforward. It's just the paint of the exterior so it can look just as nice as the new village coming up. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell.
Hello, Doctor. It's nice to see you again. I think the way you're going, we should have a sleeping bag here for you so you can sleep over here. But The estimate you had down here, was that pretty much in the ballpark of what you're...
Yeah, it's the ballpark.
It's
If
off.
it does go over, like, any construction or painting, we will cover it. So don't worry about that. It's in the
Okay.
ballpark with prevailing wages.
And a painting contractor, what, you need I think a C-33 license, something
Yes.
like that.
But it'll go out to bidding, and we will see who is the best person, and it'll be a licensed, painter.
Do you prepare the bids, or do you do that in conjunction with...
We do it with conjunction with the city. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's about all, as you know, as far as your program and your end, and the directorship that you have during your tenure. Can't say many more adjectives about it, so continue the good work.
Thank you.
And certainly nice to
We
see
just
you.
wanted to look nice with the new project. It'll be a nice village for children.
I'm quite sure it will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Bagdasarian.
Hello again.
Hi.
You have provided us with the pictures for the project, and you provided the bid. I have no question. I think it will be a very nice project to take on and complete.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian.
Yeah, I have no question. Just want to commend them for a great job, and hopefully the bids come in at less than what you've estimated as opposed to more.
Yeah, it all depends, but don't worry, we're going to cover it. We wanted to get it done.
Mr. Olivares.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. I like the detail of the proposal that's here from EBJ Construction. Are they local?
Yes, they are,
Okay. Which I
which
like
is
the fact
nice.
that-
Yeah.
So I like the breakdown of the detail. It's a very straightforward job, painting-wise. Now, is EBJ a painter or are they general contractors?
No, they're painters.
They're painters. Okay. And that's really all my questions.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty concise. It's a reasonable amount.
And they're licensed, and they do this for commercial buildings. Yeah.
Thank you.
What color?
It's the same. Not changing the color.
What color is that?
It's like a light peach that was approved already 10 years ago.
I can only approve bright colors, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that the blue in our youth recreation was really, really, really blue, and that's the one that they approved, but now with the rain, and it's been years since not so bright.
Yeah, I've always wanted to serve on the DRB, but I don't have.
Yeah, they're the ones who pick
So-
the colors. So our youth recreation stands out a little bit on the Windsor and Glendale Avenue. This one's a little toned down for mental health.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And I also enjoyed seeing the detail. And we're not talking about a huge amount here. And painting the building, if it's going to happen once every 10 years, I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I thank you because you were the ones who made it possible 10 years ago.
I was 17 or 18 years old then.
Oh,
But I appreciate your.
love it. If I may just give a gift, it's actually for all of you. Since I know, Mr. Sinayan, you didn't have a chance to come see New Horizons, and I know all of you have. I have brought a cassette of our after-school program, so you could see it. I know Mr. Amir is really fond of New Horizons and what we do, and everyone, but you haven't seen it, so you can share it at your lunchtime or at your leisure. It's for you.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, give the committee members a moment to fill out their forms. The only problem I have is if it's not interactive, I don't get to burn some calories running around. But yeah.
Go to the center. And play
Yeah,
with the
exactly. You can watch the DVDs. I'll just go over there. Okay, our next project is the Center for Mission and Community Development, sponsored by Glendale Adventist Medical Center. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you again for your patience.
Thank you. I'm Bruce Nelson, Director of Community Services at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and with me is Dan Brown, who is the Director of the plant facilities, construction, and so forth. At any rate, first of all, we want to start off by thanking you for the funding that we received for the fire life safety support, and that first phase of the project was completed recently. And now we're into the second part of that, which is the fire life safety implementation for the second floor of the building. That will go out to bid shortly. Also want to thank the staff the city staff who have been particularly helpful throughout the project, and at multiple different points, because sometimes there are occasions where negotiating all of the intricacies of the CDBG process can be challenging. But thank you. Next, I'd like to say that a little bit about the project itself. I know many of you are already familiar with it. In Glendale, gyms are in short supply. There are not a lot of gymnasiums. We're fortunate to have one, but it was built in 1926, so it is an older wood frame structure, and as a consequence, did require the fire life safety upgrades that have been completed and are now in process as well. So we're very pleased, actually. It helps us to sleep better at night knowing that that fire life safety support is in there. Now, as we implemented that particular fire life safety program, one of the things that we did run into was a problem with asbestos, and we did an asbestos abatement as a consequence of that. That asbestos abatement did raise the cost of what we were doing, although, interestingly, I also have to say that we were able to find a contractor when we did fully go out to bid that was considerably below the original estimated costs. And so the project came in at about $50,000 under what the cost was. That means there's about $50,000 remaining. We intend to use that same contractor in the next phase of the project. The next phase of the project, therefore, will also likely come in under the projected cost. As a matter of fact, we've asked that contractor to give us a preliminary bid. That's a bid in advance of the formal bid process. But since it's the same contractor that has already done the first phase, we have a fairly reliable source of information on what he expects costs to be. And he's telling us basically that the next phase is likely to come in about $100,000 less than what we originally projected. That'll be a combined $150,000 less than the money that CDBG has already allocated. I'm hoping that's not going to create a problem for you or for us, but we would like to ask that we have that money reallocated toward the next part of the project. The fire life safety, understandably, was incredibly important for us to complete because we're having lives in there that we want to protect to make sure that they are secure. And that obviously is very important. However, the next phase, which is putting in the heating and air conditioning system, is what really makes the building habitable. Because this time of the year in particular, it can get very cold and very uncomfortable for the people who are using the facility. And we find that our utilization tends to go up and down. Similarly, in the summer, again, it's a wood frame building built in 1926, and so it doesn't have all of the insulation factor, the R factor that you might see of a more modern facility. And in the summer, it can get very warm in there as well. So it's important for us to have that heating and air conditioning system that will allow us to make full use of the facility in an appropriate manner. Now, otherwise, what you're seeing is very consistent with what we said in the past. We will continue to use it in the way that we have. Glendale Adventist Medical Center has contributed this building, the parking space and facilities around it, and has contributed the upkeep to the building to the community service outreach program. That's its contribution, which is very substantial. Now, you also know that Glendale Adventist Medical Center is in the midst of a capital improvement project. We're trying to bring our facilities up to date in keeping with the requirements for earthquake safety. You're probably familiar with that challenge in the healthcare environment. And also to make sure that we have the latest in equipment. So our capital budget every year always exceeds what we're able to raise in terms of capital at the hospital. It isn't like we can, pull capital out of our hospital's capital budget and put it towards this. So we incredibly appreciate the fact that you folks have come forward with the support that you have at this point. And of course, we're asking that you continue to do so. Now, you may have questions for us, and that's why Dan is here also. He'll respond to any technical questions that you have in this respect. But we're really looking at needing about an additional $100,000 as opposed to the request that you see here. And that combined with the $100,000 that we're saving plus the 50, actually about $125,000, would pay for the entire cost of our heating and air conditioning upgrade to the facility. So I realize that we're springing that on you here, but we just learned that final piece of of information on Monday, and so I apologize for that. But it is good news, I hope, on the one hand. And then lastly, I'd say that that with respect to our request, if it does mean that all of that money isn't available, we will be able to to break it out over a couple of years if that's necessary to do so. So we've obviously done that with fire life safety. We could do that again. So, your questions?
Thank you. Mr. Olivares, we'll start with you.
Thank you. If this money was allocated to you, would this take care of finishing the building, essentially?
This would take care of the heating and air conditioning system. There are a couple other things that we'd like to do. We have got preliminary estimates of about $15,000 to $20,000 that would be needed to resurface the gymnasium floor. After the many years that it's been there, it's lost that cork underneath the floor, and it doesn't have the same kind of bounce and so forth that it did before. And it's worn right down to the nails. I mean, it has been refinished to its limit.
So if your bids came in as you expect them to be lower than
Oh, yes.
projections,
This is the last major expenditure. Beyond that, it's painting and those kinds of minor repairs that would be necessary to there would be some ADA upgrades. We needed to make the bathroom a little bit larger so that we can accommodate.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I read in here, I have a little bit of a problem with your schedule being a bit too general. And I know in the past years,
Yes.
you've had problems with
That's right.
scheduling and getting things completed on time and so on. And one of the comments in here,
Yes.
bear with me a second, talks about your architect receiving direction from Jeff Halpert, which is fire department, to identify building code issues. And my question is, why don't we know what those issues are yet?
You know what additional building code?
Well, normally we have to engage the architect. It costs money, and we don't have. So we normally wait till we have some allocation before we engage the architect and have them meet with the city. They're doing projects for us all the time, and so that's one reason why we wait for some type of indication that we're going to get some money before we engage an architect. And that doesn't take a whole lot of time for the architect to meet with the city fire. Normally just a few weeks to resolve those code issues and find out what the city is going to require for the next phase, whether it's the fire life safety, which we're in the middle of, or the next phase we're requesting, which is heating, ventilating, and air conditioning.
Right. Although I would say that I think we've kind of worked through those challenges that were the kinds of impediments that we experienced in the past, and now we're into the project. We've got the contractor's ready to finish this particular piece, and then by June or by July we would be ready to move into the heating and air conditioning phase. I think rather directly at this point. I don't really anticipate the kind of preliminary setup issues that we faced before. So.
The schedule that you propose here, who prepared that?
Yeah.
I think I worked on it with Bruce's office.
Okay,
I
because
worked on it with contractors and an architect to try to come up with a realistic schedule.
okay, I see here month 2, and I presume month 1 will be whenever you get the funds allocated, then you start the project.
Right.
On month 2, you say complete required environmental review. Why do you need environmental review here? This is all interior work, correct?
Right. There is a small environmental review that Moises' office requires, because we had one for the fire life safety. So we put that in there just in case it's needed. It may not be needed.
Okay. In other words, we're trying to learn from some of the assumptions that we made in the past that weren't necessarily correct. The things that cause delays. So this time we're putting in there to anticipate that might be an issue, so that it isn't, popping up, and we're trying to explain,
It's probably a very simple review, if anything. There's probably no traffic study required, that type of thing. It's probably a very easy one-page thing that only takes a week or so to complete.
Okay, and I see month 4, complete area maps, exhibits, and blueprints. I'm assuming that's all the work that will be prepared by your selected architect. I don't recall seeing any fees in here for architect, or did I miss it?
Yeah, in the budget of, we're requesting $275,000. There is A&E fees we're requesting for $25,000.
Okay, you threw it into A and E.
Item number 2 on
A&E, sorry, architecture and engineering.
Yeah. Okay, those were my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sinanian?
It's a good thing we have an architect with us. I feel safe.
Maybe not.
Well, explain this to me again. If indeed you are funded fully as requested and your bids come in less than what you had anticipated, the HVAC stage will be completed this year, the upcoming year?
That's correct.
Yes.
Otherwise, you'll have to straddle that between 2 years? Is that what's
First of all, let me specify that we've changed our request, and we're dropping the amount of money that we're requesting because we anticipate, and in fact know, that there will be money left over from what's already being done. So if we have the amount that together with what's left over plus the additional amount from the CDBG process, then in fact we'll be able to complete it this year. So,
Mr. Duran?
Mr. Chair, maybe I can help explain
Please.
the funding. The Fire Safety Improvement Project Phase 1, which was approved by this committee a couple of years ago, has been completed, and there's a $50,000 remaining balance. Fire Safety Phase 2 is about to get underway, and the architect anticipates that the bids will come in such a manner that they will come in $100,000 below the estimate or the budget, which hopefully, if that is the case, means that they will have $150,000 that they can then use for their current request, which is for the HVAC or Phase 3, which means that they can revise, or that they're proposing to revise today from the original request of $275,000 to $100,000. $125,000.
yes.
Okay, so they're notifying us of this revision today. So we had no prior knowledge.
If we didn't revise it and we still kept the same original number request for 275, we could use the cost underruns from the first two projects to do other things such as ADA upgrades for restrooms, ramps, repairing floors.
Although our preference is to do the heating and air conditioning system
First,
because
yeah.
even if we have good bathrooms and it's too hot or too cold, it's kind of...
Okay. So let me
Mr.
and
Sinanian?
thank you for that. But let me restate this again. So if you're funded the full 125, even with the 125, you will complete the HVAC.
Correct. As long as the 150 that's left over from the first two phases are allowed to move forward to our Phase 3
That is
request,
correct.
which is current
That's correct.
on the table.
Yes.
Thanks. And what's left over is just some minor, whatever construction,
The
issues
ADA bathroom, the gymnasium floor, there'll be some painting, some things
and
like
the
that.
ADA compliance work.
Yes. Mhm.
And do we have an estimate of how much that? I mean, I know it's complete. We would have to estimate right now. But
Well, we did, and we actually submitted that originally.
Those costs, I think the original request about 5 years ago was $450,000 or so to do the whole thing. Costs have obviously escalated since then. I'm not sure if I could put a number to it. If we received the full funding for the HVAC, we'd probably $100,000 or 200 possibly. Next go around to finish bathrooms and painting and flooring and things like that.
okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, Mr. Olivares, you had a follow-up question?
I have a follow-up question for staff primarily, and I appreciate what you're saying. I understand that. Technically speaking, though, when we allotted those funds a year or two ago, there's a scope of work and there's a dollar amount associated with it. If the dollars come in less than projected, shouldn't that money then come back to the city and be reallocated? And we may reallocate it back to you
Yes,
for a
and that's
different
what-
scope of work.
Yeah, that's what we actually expect.
Well, what I'm asking is, technically speaking, I think the money needs to stay here. They need to come in with a new proposal of how they would, if you're going to do bathrooms, if you're going to do something else. I believe that's the case.
Yes, Committee Member Olivares, that is correct. Ultimately, those that remaining balance would have come back to you to reallocate to another capital improvement project. And because of that, if I think we would need a motion from the committee today to approve or not approve carrying over the remaining balance from the phase 1 to phase 3, and contingent upon a savings of $100,000 as is projected for phase 2, to carry that forward to phase 3 as well. So the motion would be to approve the Glendale Adventist Medical Center to reuse the remaining balance of the previous year CDBG funds for their new project.
And what's the figure, Mr.
Well, okay, I'll have Mr. Carrillo.
Mr. Creo?
Yes, let me just put a little light on this. Is the first phase was a first floor sprinkler improvements, and when we bid out the project, we were surprised and thrilled that we received lower bids, and the amount of savings there was about $42,000. Since then, the contractor's also given just another estimate. Again, we haven't gone out to bid yet on phase 2. They're getting ready to prepare bid specs, but we haven't gone out to bid. So, but based on the contractor's working on it now, there could be a potential savings about $132,000 from that estimate of we have right now, which is currently $257,000. Now, typically monies do go back, but in this case, it's kind of a similar project. Phase 1 and Phase 2 were always kind of the same sprinkler project. They just broke it out in different years, so it's not like they're doing one part of the building or the other. It's all essentially one project. I would also advise Adventist and also committee that we don't know exactly when bids come out whether or not the contractor's bid is going to hold up or there are additional costs. I would certainly consider contingencies, of at least 15% for them, just in case there are different costs involved. So, but again, it is a $42,000 plus $132,000. 132 is just an estimate. It's not solid. The 42 is we know exactly we have that amount because that's what's in our account.
So I'm sorry.
Mr. Sinan, 1 second. Mr. Bagdasarian, you had a question?
No, can wait till Mr.
Okay,
Sinanian.
Mr. Sinanian?
So is the amount that may potentially be unused closer to 170, 175 as opposed to 150?
Well, it's 174 if my math hasn't failed me.
We included a 15% contingency,
Okay.
as he suggests. So,
Which is a smart thing to do.
So it is 174.
And
Yeah,
is
plus a
15%?
15%.
Because the 15%, is that about $25,000, $24,000?
10% was 17, so 15% would be 25,000.
yeah, that's where we got 150.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Bagdasarian?
Hello again. Thank you for being here. Basically the project for this year is still the estimated worksheet 25,000 for engineering, asbestos removal 25. This is the project, except we're saying we have some funds coming that could,
Right.
take care of it.
Project is 275, whether or not we carry forward funds from the previous years or not, it's still
Okay.
that amount.
So that's nice. I guess I'm looking at the proposal here, and I see that we've just completed the project that was funded 05-06, and we're going to get bids for the project that we funded last year. I know you mentioned that it's something that we could do this, and it may actually come done that this project gets done in a year or two.
The current project should be done middle of this year. We're projecting it to be done by June, July.
June, July. So you will go to the bid and we'll
Right.
finish, which is nice.
The notice to bidders is ready right now, working with Moise's office to make sure we have all the documents required for the CDBG program as backup. We're planning a bid walkthrough next week with contractors, with bids due the first or second week in March.
So that would, you get the bid and the work that we'll finish it by June, which is June,
Correct.
July, that type of a time.
If we have the same contractor do it, he's already been working in the building for the last 3 months, so.
Very, very good. Now, out of curiosity, do we still have a lot of asbestos in the buildings? The city, that still, is there a law to remove those, or that just happens as they come
What
up?
we encountered originally with the first phase was there was an old furnace from back in the 20s that had a lot of it in it, ductwork and things. So we had to abate some of it to make room for the sprinkler project. The second phase, which is on the top floor of the building, we don't think we're going to encounter it because most of that stuff was in the basement. But when we come into the air conditioning project, we know we're going to have to demo out this old, obsolete unit that has a lot of asbestos in it. And as we run new ductwork and things like that, you'll run across pipes and other things that have insulation that has asbestos in it.
Now, it's nice that the numbers have come so low for the past year projects. I don't know if it's the economy that is getting the contractors to work for lower amounts. I'm not an architect by trade, so I don't know. Is it possible that we'll have, and especially if it's a contractor that you worked with before, that we'll have similar type of things where even these numbers could be lower?
We will definitely try to make sure that that happens.
Okay.
We know that the sprinklers are a pretty easy project to do as far as costs. Air conditioning, on the other hand, is a little more involved mechanically, and the project's costs are probably more in line. It's very possible they'll come underneath, and we're hoping for that, but at this point we're still keeping the number 275.
You know, we are in a more competitive environment as far as bids are concerned, and we will take advantage of that as best we can, and keep with nonetheless the prevailing wage rates that we have to pay.
There are a lot of contractors out there, I think, who are looking for work that's probably good for us because of the economy. I think that's kind of what happened on Phase 1. Phase 1, when we went out to bid, we only had 2 bidders, unfortunately, and one was like half the other one. One bid was close to 200, and the other one was less than 100. So we're hoping on this. I've already heard interest from at least 5 contractors, so we're hoping on this Phase 2, which is going out to bid right now, we have a lot more contractors who will give us bids.
And I'd like to just make one comment. Earlier we've talked about that we're actually funding capital improvement projects, and that's good to concentrate on the technical aspects of the project. But I think since we're funding community projects as a general rule, and especially if when you don't have all the funds to match all the requirements, I think it's nice to hear about the benefits of these programs to the community, so then we can go back and put that in perspective as part of it. Because after all, that's what we're doing. We're allocating funds to projects. So wanted to see if a chairman would allow us to hear a few. I mean, I hear about your program and the benefits to the elderly and the homeless, and it's all in here. But for the benefit of the viewing audience, if you could just tell us a little bit about that, so we can, as we're doing our deliberation, we just have all the information.
Be delighted to do that. Of course,
I figured you would. That's the part that all the
Yes.
volunteer organizations like to do, brag about their program. You certainly deserve to.
We wanted to be respectful of your time, and knowing that most of you had heard a lot of our program before, we didn't do a lot of that this time. But nonetheless, we certainly enjoy doing that. The community services building, as you have probably seen in your packet, is a 10,000 square foot facility, and it has a number of different spaces that are used in different ways. The gymnasium we've talked about as obviously being one of the ones we'd really like to upgrade, because currently it's really getting to the point where it's barely usable. But we also have the entire lower floor, which just received fire life safety support, where we have a community services outreach activity, which provides food and clothing, and it provides support groups and all those kinds of things. It provides employment training for folks. We have also support groups that include AA and OA and NA and so forth. And then we're expanding that this year just with other funding that we already have coming in from revenue from the thrift shop. there's a thrift shop in there, to provide an additional space where we can identify those patrons of the facility that in fact have just unique needs. And we're having support services that include counseling services and support groups and so forth that just help them get through the tough times that people are experiencing in today's economy. Okay. Now, those are the things that we have currently going in there. We also have office space upstairs. Now, we would like to be using that office space, and we have a number of different programs that are actually currently located outside of the office space simply because of the heating air conditioning problem and other issues like that. And those provide outreach into the community that, for example, enrolls families into subsidized health insurance programs. We have over 7,500 families that have been enrolled into the subsidized health insurance programs. And that continues to go on and has been funded by grants through 2010. Obviously, you're familiar with the work that our group has done on the tobacco control issues. That's another grant-funded program, and those staff would also be located in that facility. We also have programs that are related to community outreach, doing population health screening for cardiovascular disease, pulmonary disease, and diabetes. Those staff are currently located outside of that facility, waiting to be able to move into office space in that facility. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've screened over 30,000 people for cardiovascular diabetes and for pulmonary disease.
Thank you very much. Very informative.
Like you say, I can keep going with that.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Olivares, you had a follow-up question?
I did. Is your intent to the HVAC to be a design build, or are you going to engineer that before you go out to bids?
We're still considering either way. You can do many different things with air conditioning, package units, central air. There are many different ways. So Bruce and I are discussing it, and we're working with my architect to see what is the best approach. We're worried, I'm worried that if we go to design build and go out to a bid on design build, you can get things all across the board, and you're not sure what you get. So I believe we're going to go to at least an architect to put together a set of bid documents so that everybody who bids on it will be bidding on the same thing. So what we get is what we want. We don't want a bunch of window units all around the gym. We want a good central system, whether it's on the roof or in the basement or somewhere else. We'll probably go to an architect, engineer first to set at least bid specifications, so when it is bid by a contractor, they're all bidding on the same type of air conditioning system.
Yeah, and I would add this too to that I believe that the reason that we came in at 50,000 under and that we're going to come in at 100,000 under is because we had the architectural drawings that added that kind of specificity, so that when the contractor going in knew what he was going to be expected to do, and that allowed us then to really create cost savings in the long run, even though we spent money for the architect up front.
If I may make a comment, just a general comment about your program. I'm familiar with the program. I've never been there. We don't visit capital projects, and we probably should talk about doing that in the future, because I think you're providing a social service that not many people are really aware of.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is why we're here, CDBG funds, to help make sure these programs continue. But where does most of your funding for the program come from?
Grants and contracts. So we have contracts and grants with the county and with other organizations. We've been funded by about $12 million worth of grants over the last 10 years, and we've helped other organizations here in our community get funded with another $8 million worth of grants. So we do a lot of grant writing ourselves, and we help a lot of other organizations also.
So the hospital provides the facility.
Right. Hospital
hopefully will help upgrade it, and the grants create the programs.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cornell.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson, nice to see you. Good to be a permanent fixture here. And your colleague also. Looking through the packet here, and I know Mr. Olivares brought it up, and it's my concern too, because you go back to building, I think you said 26, but indicated 1928, on the asbestos here. Looking at it, looking at the age of the building, and the contacts that we're going to find possibly in there, which we have in phase one already, I don't feel that budget item that you have in there for $25,000 will be sufficient for it.
I have an in-house gentleman who's an expert on asbestos. He's been with the facility for 18 years, and he does that as part of his job. He's been trained, the county training, the state training for asbestos. So we've done surveys for the entire building. We feel that number is fairly adequate to take care of the items needed to do the air conditioning system. As we go into other areas such as flooring, future projects, there might be more. Typically, you find that hazardous substance above ceilings, around pipes, old equipment, flooring. Sometimes you see it in the walls, but we don't feel this project is going to need a whole lot of work on walls or floors, mostly mechanical equipment, and that building has very little mechanical equipment because of its age and inadequacy. So at this time, we're feeling that number is adequate to cover the costs.
If we do get into additional expenses related to flooring or other things like that, we're more likely to cover it up than to remove it. So.
I was looking here and I didn't see it. Let me ask you this. What is the percentage of the construction costs that you have requested for funding here? Percentage of the construction cost?
The $275,000?
Yeah.
I think we're requesting 100%.
It is 100%.
Of the cost.
It's like I said, the hospital contributes to the facility, its upkeep, the parking spaces, and all of the support that goes with the programs. Even though I say that grants support that, nonetheless, there's a lot of other support that goes in managing the grants and writing them, and managing the staff and personnel and the human resources and all that other stuff that goes along with it. But nonetheless, the capital equipment budget for the hospital is more than taxed with the demands that currently exist there with the new facility and the new equipment that's going into it. So we can't access additional capital from the hospital beyond what we're already getting. But it is substantial. The in-kind contribution that we're getting is very substantial, and it's a commitment that goes for as long, that's the 10-year length, for as long as this grant is amortized over. It's a 10-year period. So it's a huge commitment on the part of the hospital in terms of real dollars.
I see here the bulk of the work is air conditioning, electrical. The type of license required on this, would that be for air conditioning, or a General B license will suffice taking care of all the work?
We probably will go to a general contractor and then they'll sub it out to an air conditioning specialty, because there'll be wall penetrations, there'll be other type of things like electrical to support it. If you go directly to an air conditioning company, they might not have the expertise to be able to do some of the other management for the entire project. So this project will probably, no doubt, go to a general contractor who can do the project in its entirety, working with the architect in our offices.
Looking through the packet, I see you're very well experienced through your many years doing this. Very well prepared packet, pretty much detailed. You should be commended for that, and it makes it easier for this member, and I'm quite sure many of my colleagues up here, to be able to look at this, get a good perspective, see what your objective is, the cost, the details, and be able to make a good decision on your funding here. So I want to compliment you for that, as well as the good work you do.
Appreciate it.
I've attended some of your sessions up there. I had met your president. Maybe he's an ex-president now. I think Murray Dean.
He's still here.
Yes, so you have a good program there, and certainly over the years have been very instrumental, impacted the community, and you should certainly be commended for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. When did you find out about the surplus for the funding year 05-06 CDBG funds?
Well, I called Moise's office actually yesterday to get a detailed exact number. We've known for probably a little bit of time that we were probably going to come under by a bit. We weren't sure. And we wanted to make sure the project was totally done before we started pursuing that cost underrun direction. We apologize for that piece of it. Kind of gave you some confusion today. We just did those calculations yesterday, and I apologize to Moise's office too for that last-minute change.
My only concern, and the reason why I ask, is because, and this would be directed both at you and at staff. We really do need that information as soon as possible. I think it's unfair for a lot of the public not to know how much money is actually out there. And I understand how it was explained. It's just concerning to me because, and it may be ironic given the fact that, some of the pre-designated projects sometimes are kind of sight unseen drawing type projects, and we're asking all these questions, specific questions from these organizations. But at the same time, when we're talking about $175,000, I mean, that really changes the ballgame in terms of the public knowing what's out there to apply for. And there were a lot of, I've heard from a lot of groups grumbling as far as, what the amount of money that's available, is not significant enough to pursue extremely large projects, significant, multi-year projects, because, there's only $300,000 available, or what do we got? $281,000 available. So, can I get some help here, Mr. Duran, Mr. Creo, in terms of the timing and how this could possibly be better handled in the future?
Yes, Chairman Marion. Typically what we will do is we will not designate a remaining balance as a remaining balance until we've closed out the project account. We have not closed out this project account, so this is a very recent development, or a very recent idea on the part of Glendale Adventist Medical Center to think about, if we're going to have a surplus to carry it forward to the other phases. But we won't report the availability of funds to reprogram until we've closed out the account. And we know that every invoice has been paid. There are no other outstanding things that have to be paid out. So we wouldn't have reported the $42,000 remaining balance to you until much later.
Okay. And in that sense, by no means am I criticizing the fact that you guys came under budget. No, in no way, shape, or form. It's fantastic.
Try to do better next time.
Yeah,
bring us higher.
$175,000. What are you guys thinking? No, obviously we appreciate that. I just, every single penny for us is so important, and I rack my brain and I sit here and I think, how am I going to do this? So,
yes.
That's where the frustration stems from, not with the fact that you did come under budget. As far as the project itself, we know the Glendale Adventist Medical Center. We know what you do for the community, and you have demonstrated in the past the capability of administering these capital funds and CDBG funds. So there's no question in my mind as far as that's concerned. In terms of the specifics, many of those questions have been answered. And if you wanted to say one last thing, I grant that.
That's one reason why we brought kind of forward this time that we're probably going to be under budget on Phase 2. It sounds like maybe that's not going to be reported until the Phase 2 is going to be totally done. You guys can work that out. But we appreciate all the funding that we can get to try to upgrade these older buildings that we use for the community.
And I would add to that we share your concern about making dollars stretch as far as we can possibly make them stretch. And we're deeply committed to making that happen in our project.
And we all appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Olivares?
One final thing, now that we're talking about reallocating funds, closing accounts, and so on, which is why I asked what I asked earlier. I think we need to look at their request here is for $275,000 is what we're looking at, regardless of where your numbers come in later, is what we need to look at. And in the future, when those funds do get reallocated, there will need to be a proposal for those funds on your part. My question to you is, if we can't fund the 275 right now, what happens?
And that was the basis of my comment earlier, that in fact this project can also be split up. It isn't, and just like we split up the fire life safety, we can also split this up as well, and we can put in the heating, air conditioning in half the building, and then do the other half subsequently.
So when
It's
you engineer
possible,
it,
yes.
you can engineer it in two phases.
Sure.
Correct, or depending on the amount that is allocated to us, we could just dedicate it to the A&E portion of it for the whole building, depending on how much is allocated to us.
Yeah.
If it is broken up, probably the project cost in total might be more over a cost. If it's all 1 year, it's probably be less money. Once you start splitting it into multiple years, then costs escalate, as you are aware.
Okay, that was
We're
my final
also
question.
aware that there's limited funding available this year.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for coming out, and thanks for your patience.
Yes.
Okay, I will give my fellow committee members a moment to fill out their forms, their evaluation forms. Okay, our next and final group, last but certainly not least, is the Roosevelt Middle School Parkway Improvements, sponsored by the Glendale Unified School District. I want to thank you and welcome you. Thank you for your patience. I know you're very busy, and I'm sorry that we kept you here so long, given that you were scheduled to go an hour ago. So I do apologize for that.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the committee members. We are happy that to be here today, and thank you for taking into consideration our plea for help from your committee. We appreciate that, truly. My name is Maureen Anami. I am the Director of Facilities for the school district, and my team members here are Dr. Maria Gandera, the principal of Roosevelt Middle School, and Armand Malin, the project supervisor of this project that we hope to get done this year. The Roosevelt Middle School, as I'm sure you're aware, is down here on South Glendale on Glendale Avenue and Acacia Street. It's been there since it was constructed in 1926. Has a student population currently over 1,000 children go there. It's undergone numerous modernization projects through the years. In 2003, a new school entrance was constructed, and the students no longer enter on Glendale Avenue, and they now enter on Acacia. And due to this change, the flow of traffic, foot traffic that is coming up Acacia, has grown considerably, and the sidewalk is a little narrow there, and it doesn't hold the volume of traffic that we need and feel is adequate. So what's happening are the students are walking through the mud and the grass, and it's a safety concern that we have, that the students can't have safe thoroughfare to the entry of the school. So that's our main concern, is that the safety. Last week when it was raining, they were slipping and sliding through the mud, and then when it's dry, because of the compression of the foot traffic, it becomes a trip hazard. So our request is not as grandiose as some that we've seen this morning, but nevertheless, it's important, and it's a concern for our school district.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Let's start with Mr. Cornell.
Oh, okay.
4 projects. Are you surprised?
Yeah.
Everybody
I
else got
forgot.
started.
Yeah, I guess it was
Okay.
my turn, so I shouldn't
Okay.
be overcome that.
Okay.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And your staff as well there. Wanted to ask you, I the school district, I was very instrumental, along with Pam Ellis and
Yes.
Lenore. I think back when we had the Measure K passed
Yes.
in 1997. I was wondering why would this qualify for portions of Measure K for this scope of project that you're presenting to us today?
This project, when Measure K was working at the school back in 2003, it was not covered under that. And so because we did not get funding at that time, we've moved forward to get this done now.
One item here, I see it's mostly landscaping here.
Yes, it's a
irrigation and so
parkway,
on.
yes.
So, most likely a landscape contract license C27 would be able to handle the work.
You know, I'm not sure what kind of contractor did.
General contractor. General contractor.
Oh, you need a license then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Could you just state your name for the record?
Armand Maiden, maintenance supervisor.
Thank you.
That is pretty much it, Mr. Chairman, that I just had on a couple of questions here. So,
Thank you, Mr. Cornell. Mr. Bagdasarian?
Hello. Thank you for being here. So I'm looking at the pictures. The idea here is, as you explained, it changed some of the landscaping with, so the kids would not have the issues with
Yes,
the...
add some additional walkway, and we'll also be putting in some tree grates for the trees to protect
Put just
them.
trees, surround the trees. Okay. I don't have any question. It's very complete package. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Thanks, Mr. Sinania. Thank you, Mr. Bagdasarian. Mr. Olivares?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I do have a few questions. I was going over your budget. I had a little trouble reconciling the plans versus the budget, but I think I understand what the scope of work is. First question is, this proposal is from MS Construction and Shank Developers. Are they two different entities?
That's correct.
Because I see you've broken down the cost in some numbers go to MS Construction, some go to Shank. Why is that? What's the issue?
Well, if any projects over $15,000, we normally go outside bid, public bid. So we decided to ask a couple of contractors to give us an estimate. So this is a proposal from two different contractors, and we combined. We got.
Oh, you put them both in the same.
Yes.
Okay, that's what threw me off. I would expect to see one from one guy and one from the other, as opposed to both in here.
We actually followed the application. They requested that.
True.
So.
Okay, because there's quite a bit of difference between the two in some
That's
of these line items. Yeah, I'm glad you did that because it does give you a good comparison. I did have a concern with you listed City of Glendale permit as $6.50 and inspection fee as $80, and they just don't seem realistic at all.
I believe that was just because we had done this. We've been working on this since 2004. That could have been just from previous applications. We had to put those in.
Okay. And then I did not see a line item here for city bonds or because you are in the public way.
Right.
And I don't see that here anywhere.
We asked general contractors, and they have worked for us, and they're all they have the bonds and everything. They have worked for us before, Shank Developers and MS Construction.
So you're saying that's included in these
Yes,
numbers?
it is.
They built it into the various numbers. Okay. And then one final question: has the scope of work been reviewed with the City of Glendale?
No.
So nobody's been to the city to discuss if you can actually do this, or?
No.
I'm thinking, I know that they have requirements for trees on the public way. There are all kinds of things that will come up. So that has not taken place.
Not that I've known.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Most of my concerns, especially the City of Glendale permit and the inspection fee,
I wish there were
noticed
those
that as well.
numbers.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I had some of the same concerns. So the goal, I guess, would be to secure the promise of funding and then approach the city as far as whether it would be feasible at all?
I believe back when modernization or after modernization was completed, John Fenton was the director at that time, and I believe he did have conversations with the city at that time, so we would need to revisit and open discussion again. But yes, there was some dialogue back in 2003, 2004.
Okay, if there are, Mr. Duran.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I could clarify a little bit. This parkway improvement project would have to be coordinated and approved by the Public Works Department. And historically, we've completed a number of these school parkway improvement projects. And historically, it's actually been managed by the Public Works Department in collaboration with the school district. So this would probably be handled the same way, and it would probably be up to the Public Works Department to schedule this project in their broader schedule of their work plan.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
If I can take 1 minute? Or 1 second,
of course.
actually.
Oh, welcome.
Morning.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. This is an invitation. My name is Maria Gandera, and I am the proud principal of Roosevelt Middle School. So I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration, and just say, please come visit our school. You want to be interactive? Recess starts in about 5 minutes, or at 12:30 when we have lunch, and you can play basketball with my kids.
25-minute recess.
Okay?
Yeah.
15. So. But the rest of you, please come and you can play basketball, or I'd love to show you my kids and what they're
Great
doing
facility.
in the classrooms. They're wonderful.
Thank
And
you
my
so
teachers
much.
are fantastic. So
Thank
please,
you.
anytime.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Give you a moment to fill out the evaluation forms. I have no public comment cards for any of the interview, this portion. I am going to suggest that we take a brief recess before we get to the deliberation. And again, I appreciate the public and also the agencies being patient with us as we, to use a George Bushism, misunderestimated the time that it would take. So we're going to take a brief recess, I would say roughly about 5 minutes, and we will be back.